Welcome, everyone, to the Charmed Life podcast. This is the live version, multi-streaming, and you can always find us on YouTube. Is kind of my favorite place to direct you to find where we are. We are doing this at 11 a.m. Pacific on Thursdays, and some will have some extra episodes here and there. This podcast is all about magic, metaphysics, mysticism, and the unconditional love of the universe, and I'm your host. My name is Tricia Carr. I am a channel and intuitive, human design reflector, a transpersonal hypnotherapist, and an eco-spiritual teacher. I'm so glad to have you here. And I want to invite you to like, subscribe, share, comment, click the little bell so you get notifications for when we are scheduled to do one of these and then when we are doing one of these. And when you join us live, you can join in the conversation. You can make comments and we will see it and we will interact with you. And I have on special guests as I do today. And it's just really a wonderful time to give to yourself for your expansion in your spirituality, in your well-being, in your self-actualization, and in your transcending the ego and moving into your spiritual path of light. So welcome, welcome. You can also find me on Instagram and the podcast itself, the audio podcast, where I actually share something a little bit extra when I post the conversations and the other things that we do live here on the video version. So I want to get into who I have on today, a powerful speaker, thought leader, and contributing to our world in beautiful ways. The subjects here are alignment and abundance and intention, which I think feels to us when we are a bit bumped around in the world, and the unconsciousness and the distortion that we have all been creating. That intention feels elusive and ephemeral, but it is the seed of all thought. And of course, if you're here on a spiritual pursuit, then you know that we are in an experience of thought form, of thoughts creating things. All right, I'm about to bring on my guest. I'm teasing it a little bit, but I wanted to make a couple of announcements. If you check the comments, you'll see these links. But what I'm showing you here are a couple of programs that I have coming up, or actually that are underway right now. This one here on the screen is called Easy Intuition and Meditation. And this is a 30-day journey that is where you get delivered lessons and meditations for your self-inquiry, for your spiritual exploration, and for you to be able to actually fall in love with meditation again or for the first time, as I have these really high quality, varying lengths, varying subjects of meditations. Recently I heard someone say, someone said, my friend said this, so I can't properly attribute, that meditation is like a toothbrush for the mind. It actually creates sanity, and it actually creates sanitary landscape inside your mind and inside your spirit and your emotion, your mind, body, spirit complex. So that is what we're offering here, and to help you to connect to that deep intention and intuition. I also have coming up animal communication. This is the nearest and dearest thing to my heart that I offer. And this is a 4-week course. It's actually over 5 weeks, but it's a 4-module course to help to open up animal telepathy. It's amazing. It is always such a surprise and such a joy. So check that out and sign up, because that is happening. It's starting August 20th. I have another program called Empowered Empath. You'll find that on my website. I'll leave that up to you. But we do have the meeting for the Easy Intuition, the bonus healing meeting coming up next week on August 8th, the Lionsgate. So without further delay, I want to invite on my special guest for this episode, Daniel Mangena. Welcome, Daniel. Thank you for being here.
Hey, thank you for having me. Really, really happy to be here.
Well, I want to hear all about Dream with Dan and everything that you're doing. Would you mind letting everyone get into the magic of your work, your journey, and the work that you're doing, wherever you'd like to start?
Well, first and foremost, I love to consider myself as just being an ordinary guy that gets to do extraordinary things. And I think so often we lose sight of the inherent magic that's inside of all of us. And that's something that we often give away as a result of maybe not seeing the light that we have within us. And I think that's what's so great about the work that you're doing, really empowering people to discover and uncover that light that's within them. And I like to think that I get to do the same thing too, really inspiring people to have an ignition and an inspired reminder of our natural state of abundance. And I do that through speaking, through written content, and I write for some magazines, I write books, and I blog, and just getting to meet with people on an everyday basis. And I'm really blessed to be able to do that.
I love this. This is something that I talk about in my spiritual development programs, exceptional human experiences. That's how it's identified in psychology, is
Hmm.
exceptional human experiences. And that has to do with like having spiritual or religious experiences, but other also peak experiences. And people like you are kind of saying, hey, the exception can be the rule, having
Hmm.
peak and fantastic experiences can be a lifestyle.
Hmm.
Doesn't mean that the challenges go away, but why
Yeah.
not why not exceptional human experiences be more of the lifestyle than the suffering,
Yeah.
right?
And I think that you just touched on a point that's really been very present for me recently, because I know that a lot of people have had very challenging times over the last few years,
Yes.
not just because of the lockdowny type stuff that people are experiencing and so on and so forth, and a lot of the psychological oppression, I would even say, that we've been subject to
Yeah.
within each other. If you look at the divisiveness that's been happening around the world and the way that people have been really just attacking each other on all different levels and
Mm.
leading even into all out war in some parts of the world. And in the midst of that, it can be very challenging to accept some of these ideas that we're speaking about, that
Yeah.
abundance can be natural, that you are the light. I had the opportunity to do a live broadcast yesterday, and one of the questions that came up is, yeah, it's very easy for you to say, Dan, that, oh, I'm abundant and all of that. But when I look at my real life and I see these challenges around, I don't feel very abundant. I see challenges.
Yeah.
And I think it's really, really a really beautiful thing to acknowledge that being the light doesn't mean that there won't be shadows. In fact, the bigger the
Mm.
light, the bigger the shadows will be, right? Being the light doesn't mean that there won't be challenges. In fact, we live in a contrast driven reality. The bigger your light is, the bigger the corresponding challenges have to be in order to keep everything in the perfect balance that we experience in nature. And I
Yeah.
think sometimes we lose sight of that need for balance, and that the whole of it is beautiful. And that when we can see that both sides that we have a judgment about are just part of this beautiful whole that we get to be a reflection of or get to take part in, then there's a yumminess that we get to dive into, and there's a resistance that we get to let go of, and there's a self-judgment and guilt and shame and stuff that we get to let go of, because we just get to see all of it's yummy, all of it's beautiful, all of it's delicious, all of it's divine.
Yes, I love this word yummy, and thinking about, because I have a background in culinary arts, and
Ah.
you have to touch the five and even the six aspects of the palette in order for it to have real depth and real
Mm,
nuance, because that's what life is. Life is
mm,
nuance.
mhm,
And when we see something is missing one of these critical resources that would indicate life, then
mm,
we aren't as drawn to it, or at least it doesn't serve us as well. It doesn't help us as much because it's not as
mhm.
life-giving, I would say.
Agreed. Agreed.
I would love
Agreed.
to hear if you wouldn't mind sharing, because speaking of challenge and speaking of when the shadows show, you
Hmm.
you had a life-changing diagnosis at some point. Would you be interested in
Hmm.
sharing about that challenge, and of course,
Yeah,
how
sure.
you got here now?
Yeah, sure. So I was late diagnosed with Asperger's,
Mm,
and the funny thing is I don't really see it so much as a challenge. It was actually quite a gift to get that
yeah,
diagnosis, because
beautiful.
I've been suffering from very severe social anxiety and general anxiety for most of my life up until that point, and I didn't have a reason as to why that was showing up. And through a beautiful course of synchronicities, it actually began with me having a really, really bad bout of insomnia. I ended up getting the diagnosis, and going back to being the light, I was able to, I think I was blessed to have the right support. And I think having the right support is so important. And that's why when we as humans do have the opportunity to actually consciously step into support, whether it's coming to a program, working with a coach, working with a healer, working with whatever, it's really great to just jump on that. Because there'll be
Mhm.
times in your life when you wish that you had support. And in this instance, I was blessed that I did have it. But when the divine puts the support in our path for us to be able to step into, it's really great. But yeah, Dr. Helen McEwen was absolutely awesome. She supported me through. She didn't just say, "This is your diagnosis." She actually took me on a journey, and then at the end said, "Hey, I think this might be what's been going on with you. we dove into it a little bit more, and she supported me actually in integrating that into my life. And then throughout my life, then I've had more angels that have been sent to support me. But Asperger's just that my brain is wired a bit differently, a lot differently, and the chemistry in my brain works somewhat differently. But there are gifts in there, and I think going back to what we were just saying about contrast and having two sides to things, I've spent my time focusing on what the gifts are and allow myself to be supported in what the challenges are, and then I just get to enjoy life as a result.
Right. And if you think about it, the challenges are really maybe not your challenges, it's
Mm-hmm.
the collective's challenges, because there's
Mm-hmm.
something anomalous about how your brain is wired. But
Mm-hmm.
anomalies are a part of nature. And
Exactly.
in nature, we need them. It's our
Mm-hmm.
strength that is,
Mm-hmm.
to be able to, an anomaly can disrupt a pattern or disrupt a habit. And we need that. That's how we
Mm-hmm.
grow. So
Mm.
you're a
100%.
tremendous gift. And
Thank
to
you.
us
Thank
in
you.
our ecosystem, and I appreciate
Oh,
that.
thank you.
I love that you said the support,
Mm-hmm.
because I heard I'm in a program for mind body psychology, and one of our instructors, one of our the the psychotherapist who's an instructor, she said that we ask our clients, do you have a support system? And that's one question, and they say yes, but how often do you call on the support system? Do you
Yeah.
let the support system, or are we allowing ourselves to be aware of cultivating the support system?
Yeah. Are we active or are we passive in our
Yeah,
relationship to that support?
yeah.
One of the things I love is that a phrase that I use, that possibility doesn't equal probability. So
Mm,
just because the
mhm.
possibility of support is there doesn't mean the probability of you actually accessing it is going to magically show up in your life. We need to step into it, and that's why I think it's so important to really pay mind to the gifts that are present to us and develop that intentional relationship to those gifts and step into them. Otherwise, they become the unused thing that's in the house, right? Or that was it the parable of the talents, the thing that we dug and put in the ground because we were scared of what was going to happen to it. We have all of this that's available to us, but if we don't step up and step into it, then what use is it to us in our everyday life?
That leads me to my next question, because if we aren't stepping up and into it, it has
Hmm.
something to do with what, how you might think of it as worth or confidence, or just the way that we've been conditioned to think we can't. And
Hmm.
you've said a couple of times that you are the light. If we can resource that
Hmm.
identity, that I am the light, maybe that will
Hmm.
help us to connect with it. Can you expand on that? What does this mean when you say you are the light or I am the light?
So I think so. There's a framework that I use, which is the difference between reality and truth, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so reality is the three-dimensional, if you want, holographic experience that we have with our senses. It's interpreted by the mind, and we have these things that we call our reality.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but it's subjective because one person sees the glass half empty, one sees the glass half full, one sees the gold dress, one sees the blue dress, right? One sees a villain and one sees a hero. We look at the same data points and we have our own interpretations through our own biases. But truth supersedes all of that because truth is encompassing all. Some may refer to that to be the divine itself, that all encompassing all. But ultimately, at our very essence, we are all the same substance that takes different shapes and forms. This is a scientific fact. It's not our spiritual woo-woo opinion. If we open up, if I open up this bottle cap, this one of my hair follicles, it comes down to atoms that are electrons, neutrons, biops, quarks, biops, zeeps, and blah blah blah. And if we open up any of those things, it's just empty space. It's energy,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And when we allow ourselves to again focus our attention on that connectivity, and then look at the fact that that connectivity as energy actually we interpret it as light. Everything is light being interpreted, operating at different wavelengths, and we're all that one thing. And when we get to claim that as a truth that we bring
Mm.
into our reality that becomes part of our identity, we then get to access more of that potential. That's when we can start to move past limitations of who and what we are, what we were told we can be. That's when we get to make those massive contributions and impact in the world because we're accessing that depth. Some may say channeling the divine or channeling God or channeling the universe, but for me, it's just being who we are.
Yeah. Mm.
That's it.
In its deepest, most profound, most capital T truth,
Yeah.
um, of that. It reminds me, I want to share. So I had this experience of having like a telepathic communion with a tree, and I really like
Mhm.
received some real like insight. I mean, I was on the same wavelength, so it got
Mhm.
translated into something that was meaningful for me. And I
Mhm.
actually heard something outside of my head, that like
Mhm.
a word. It was actually, the word was will, and no one was
Mm.
around to say it. And it was really
Mhm.
fascinating. And so I had this peak experience, or this exceptional human experience, although it's one of the rules of my life. There's a rule. I telepathically communicate,
It's just what you
and
do, love. It's just
it's
what you do.
just it's boring. And I shared it with a friend, my best friend, and she like got an inspiration to write a children's book and brought me in on it. We wrote a little children's book about it,
Mm.
about a child who, was walking along, and he sat and he heard a tree say, "Will," And
Mm.
when the child was surprised, the tree said to him, "Why such surprise? We're all made of the same stuff. We're all souls in
Mm.
disguise." And that souls in
Mm.
disguise, or light in
Mhm.
disguise, if you will.
Mhm. Mhm. I love that. I love
I
that.
just thought I would share that because it
No,
makes
no,
me
and
almost weep every time.
the thing is, speaking to that thing about even the tree
Mhm.
being a soul in disguise,
Yeah.
I had the opportunity last year to visit. It's kind of like a mystical village called Damanhur in northern
Ooh.
Italy. It's this community that have been playing the game of consciousness, and they've built these temples, these really elaborate temples into the mountains in northern Italy. It's a wonderful place. Anyway, so Damanhur, DAMUNHUR.org. I really do recommend you guys see it. Just take a look at the website. It's magical and amazing. But the thing I wanted to mention is, one of the activities that we did is they've got these devices that they've built and engineered that they plug into plants, and they can actually translate the frequency that the plants are generating into sound, into
Wow.
singing.
Oh,
And
yes.
so you get
Amazing.
to hear the plants singing. And so I got to meditate to the singing of this tree that was like a couple of 100 years old, right?
Yeah.
And you get people that start to talk about conscious, whether something's conscious or not, whether something is alive or not.
Mhm.
And just that experience of literally having the most beautiful meditation to a tree singing
Yes.
really just drove home for me the exemplification of what you're saying, that we are all just souls in disguise, even the tree, even the plant, all of it.
Yeah. Oh
Mm.
gosh. I want to go to there.
I recommend it. I really, really do. I really, really do.
Would you like to share, because I know that you have a heart and work in helping to prevent suicides, with
Hmm.
all this powerful insight that you're bringing to us today. How is
Hmm.
that work? How do you experience that work?
Well, it came from a personal experience. I actually made my way back from a very dark place of suicidal ideation.
Mm.
I'm actually grateful. It was actually my autistic brain that stopped me going off to make an attempt, because my autistic brain needs to work in order, and there
Okay.
were certain things that weren't in order. And so I ended up taking a break from that plan and going off and taking actions that led to actually finding the light. And for me, I've done some work with an organization in the UK called the Samaritans, which is a suicide hotline. But I think for me, I've really sort of jumped in with 2 feet into supporting what I feel is, at least most of the time in my experience of my own life and people that I've spoken to, the sense of helplessness that leads to people thinking that there is nothing else to do,
Mm.
and empowering people to be more intentional and to really consciously create their life. Doesn't get rid of the feeling, it doesn't get rid of the shadow, but it does certainly bring more light to the self, so that the shadow has less of a power over us in our everyday lives. And that's one thing that I think I think is probably the front, the real forefront now that I do with that work. It's really seeking to empower people to not be in a space where they feel that that has to be the option, but
Mm.
also bringing people to a space of peace if that's what they feel is the option that's right for them. And that's what I do with that.
Wow. That's such
Mm,
a loving space to hold for others.
mm.
Brave, very brave. Thank you for doing that. Can you tell us about Dream with Dan? You're the founder of Dream with Dan. And it's, I
Yeah,
imagine this must be a part of this work as well.
yeah. So I was looking for a brand. So my name is Daniel Mangena. It's a very difficult name to do, right? And so I originally had another
I'm sorry, I
domain.
said your name wrong, and I usually ask in
It's all right.
advance.
It's all right. It's
Mangena,
all right.
everyone. I said
It's
it
all right.
wrong, and I will
Don't worry.
say
Don't
it
worry.
correctly.
The E confused. The E after the G makes it confused. But my friend at the time, she's unfortunately passed since then. She's like, oh no, you can't do that. You've got to be branded. You can't have like a random thing. I was like, oh, what can I do? And dreaming and there's a whole thing I've got around dreaming. One of my earlier books is The Dreamer's Manifesto. I'm the Dreamer CEO, and I do a lot of stuff around dream and linking physical reality and lucid dreaming and all sorts of fun stuff with that. I was like, well, one of Dream with Dan's available, and it was, and it became the domain that I was actually able to get my hands
Amazing.
on. And so that's my main website. But there, I've got all of the work that I've got is on there. My social media links are on there. I write my blogs. I also write for Entrepreneur Magazine and some other magazines, just bringing consciousness into these spaces, and my podcast and all that kind of stuff. So it's just a central place to find me and the work that I get to play with and connect with me. Yeah, Dream with Dan is just the place to go for that.
Wonderful. Can you tell us about you have several books. The recent mentioned
Yeah.
Dreamer's Manifesto. How many do you have?
Yeah.
Like 5 or 30 or something?
So the funny thing is that in my journey to the work that I do now, I was running away. I had very much a Jonah and the whale experience. A lot of people that I've come across that do this kind of work, oh, my life was empty. I had this big hole in my life and I feel like I wasn't living my purpose. I was living my best life. And so when I started getting all of these signs and synchronicities that I'm supposed to come and be what I thought was going to be a poor teacher, I was like, no, I don't want to do that. I'm enjoying my life. I don't want to do that. And I tried to make a deal with God, and I was like, okay, right. I'll do some speaking, and I'll write that book that's kind of been there in the back of my head. Then will you leave me alone? And I was like, well, the books was quite a big project, and I found myself procrastinating. And so for me, an easy way to break the procrastination is to find something momentum to do. And so my first book, From Time to Time, isn't really anything to do with the work that I really do on a day-to-day basis. I simply took the framework that I use for time mastery and I made a book about it. And I just, all right, now I'm a published author. There's not such a big thing about me publishing a book. And then the other book was still taking time. And so I sat down and I wrote The Dreamer's Manifesto, which is just when I say dream with your eyes open, which is my catchphrase, what does that mean? And how can we bring that into our life? And so it's a very short book. You can read it in an hour and a half. It's like a little motivational book. And then I was able to release Stepping Beyond Intention, which is the principal book about my work around intentionality and manifestation and abundance. And then I put out Money Game, which is my specific formula for manifesting money. And it's really quite a miraculous little framework. There's, again, another little book that you can put in your back pocket. And you're working on another book now. We're working on a deal with a major publisher, and we're re-releasing we're re-releasing Stepping Beyond Intention again under another publisher too, and just getting that out into more people.
Wow, what great prolific work. I love that. Can you tell us about intention? Talk to us about the importance and how that brings us into alignment and how that brings us abundance, since that's our topic.
See, when we look at our life, I think it's imperative that we understand that we are always creating, we're always manifesting. You know, I sometimes joke when people, I'm going to teach you how to manifest. We can't really teach anyone we're always manifesting. It's just we're not always conscious about what we're manifesting. And for me, intentionality is bringing a level of deliberate consciousness to what we are manifesting, because we are manifesting all the time. And that deliberate, intentional direction of focused energy into what we want to create is disrupting the unconscious programs that are generally what we're manifesting from all the time. Someone who's playing out patterns and programs of ill health, poor relationships, of lack, all of these stories, when it's generating on a consistent basis, it means that there's an unconscious program running that is manifesting that out for you. Intentionality allows us to disrupt that pattern and create something that we've consciously chosen.
Disruption again, because I said that, the anomalies are the disruption in the pattern of nature. And so I like it. I like it. And what I'm hearing, can you let me know if I am on track here? We don't have to be perfectly healed of all of our past trauma, ancestry, blah, 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 which are the big reason why unconscious patterns are running, or the conditioning that's always been boom, 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 coming into us. Intention can cut right through that. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think yes, and there will be limitations that because what we're manifesting is a reflection of where we're at frequentially, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which includes what we're thinking, what we're feeling, and what we're doing. If there are unhealed parts, yes, there will be some limitations on what we're able to connect to as a result of that. But what I love to empower people to do is not fall into what I call perpetual planning loop, where we never actually move into trying to create anything because we're stuck trying to do the healing work. Oh, I'll get to that when I'm finished healing. When sometimes that's a little trick that the mind plays to keep you in the same place, keeps you running on the hamster wheel of healing and never actually moving forward, and sometimes never actually even healing. And so I think it's a gift that we don't have to finish the healing journey in order to move into new manifestations. We can move with the healing and continue to grow into manifesting more as we heal and go, and to celebrate and to dive into those new pockets of available manifestation possibilities that emerge as we continue to do our healing work.
And because the manifestations, however they happen, and they are a
Mm-hmm.
reflection of what's inside, they help us to, I mean, it's outpictured now. And so I move
Mm-hmm.
into that and it's helping to heal me.
Exactly,
So
exactly.
we'll heal
It
in a
can become a
vacuum
positive. It
or
can
not.
become a positive feedback loop, right? That supports
Exactly.
us as we go forward. And
Ooh, I
even
like
if it
that.
doesn't directly move into, it, in the very least, creates a momentum that we can ride the wave of into our healing journey. Because sometimes what will happen is, like I said, people, oh, I've got to do the healing, got to do the, I'm stuck in the treadmill, I'm here, I'm doing my healing, and you're not moving anywhere, you're stuck in the same place.
Yeah.
But then when you actually start, okay, I'm healing with this thing. As I'm moving into this healing, is there space for me to grow and expand and create something new? Boom, that, okay, boom. Then that momentum feeds back. Oh, I'm healing, I'm moving forward, I'm growing. That feels good. I've got positive hormones and chemicals running through my body because I'm celebrating it. And that's expanding and creating pockets in my mind for me to actually support that with more supportive stories and more empowered stories versus the negative ones that had me in this little healing pocket that I was in before. And as I grow and heal and grow and heal and grow and heal, then all of a sudden I can start to get to a place where I realize that the healing wasn't required because there's something wrong with me. The healing is just another level of the game that I get to play of life. And maybe I don't even need to quote unquote heal anymore. I get to enjoy where I am. And that can sometimes be the quantum leap breakthrough that we experience that takes us to the next level.
Oh my gosh, I gotta like transcribe that. That's like a prescription. I love it. You manifest and then you take the positives. As you were saying,
Yeah.
like, your diagnosis is not a
Hmm.
pathology, it's a gift. And so you're
Yeah.
focusing on the gifts. So when we
Hmm.
manifest, there's positives to that. Let that be a momentum in a positive feedback loop. I love
Yeah.
it.
Exactly. Exactly.
So, can you tell us how people can work with you? You have this incredible, you're speaking and you have your books and these and you have a podcast. What are some other
Hmm.
ways that people can connect with you and be involved in the work that you're doing and be blessed by you?
Oh, well, thank you. I think the best thing to do is to head over to dreamwithdan.com. There's a free resources page. Um, find a resource that supports you with where you're at in your journey. We do have a little quiz you can do when you pop on the website. It pops up somewhere. And you just answer a few questions and it helps you to discover what your block to abundance is. And then there's some resources that will support you on the journey of actually playing with that. I think that's a really great way to start. Just maybe get to know me a little bit more beyond this conversation. Check out the podcast, maybe check out what's going on social media, and then we can go from there.
Is your podcast Dream with Dan?
No, it's called Do It With Dan, actually. It's
Oh,
Do It With
okay. Do it with
Dan.
Dan.
Yeah.
I have a friend who his name is David Gandelman. He's been on the podcast, and he has a sleep podcast, and it's Grounded Sleep with
Yeah.
David Gandelman. And so I always go Grounded Sleep with David Gandelman. He's like,
Yeah,
no, don't
yeah,
don't
yeah.
do it that
I've,
way.
I've, I've I've heard, I've had a number of, did I just do it with dad?
Uh,
I'm doing it with dad. Calm
I
down,
like it. I
darling.
think it's
Calm down.
fun.
It is, definitely.
Well, this has been so incredible. I would love to have you back on. I mean, I
I'll
could
be
I could
honest.
just sit in your energy for long
Oh, thank you.
for an hour. or So, yeah, I'd love for you to come back on. Is there anything,
It's
any
okay.
last thing you would you like to share? And I'm going to say your name again correctly, Daniel Mangena. Gena?
Yeah, yeah.
Daniel
Mangena.
Mangena. Daniel Mangena. Daniel Mangena. I got it. Okay.
I think that the only thing I'd love to leave everyone with is that, none of us are getting out of this thing alive.
Mhm.
So enjoy every moment of it. Allow it to be a game that you play and allow it to be a game that you know that you can enjoy the playing of, not a game that you're trying to win.
Oof. Thank you. Stitching that on a pillow too. This has been so
Brilliant.
wonderful, Daniel. Thank you for
Thank you
blessing
for
us
having
with
me.
your gifts. Yes, it's been
No, thank you.
wonderful.
Thank you.
All right, everyone. That's what we have for you for this episode. You know what? I want to invite you to the next one. I don't know if you noticed us putting up some of those little clips of the brilliant drops of gold that Daniel was saying. And so if you come to the next one on 11 a.m. Pacific on Thursday, you can find those and pop them in the comments if I missed some or whatever. And it'll kind of engage us on a deeper level. So just reminding you to check the show notes for all of Dan's links, all of Daniel's links, and of course, everything that I have coming up, including Easy Intuition and Meditation, Animal Communication Certification course, and of course, the podcast and all of the other things. I'm so grateful to connect with you here. Thanks for tuning in. I love you, whoever you are.